It was a legendary escape from a place that was supposed to be inescapable. 55 years ago this month, three men pulled off the impossible, breaking Alcatraz.
Alcatraz has always been more than concrete and cold water. It's been a riddle wrapped in razor wire, soaked in fog and legend. For decades, the world has stared at that jagged island in San Francisco Bay, asking the same haunting question. Did they make it out alive? Now, in 2025, a new twist has emerged, one so precise, so unexpected, it's turning everything we thought we knew inside out. But don't expect a tidy ending. This isn't a story of heroes or villains. It's a story of shadows, science, and a single night that still echoes with secrets. Before we proceed, subscribe to this channel for more true crime mysteries, hidden histories, and unsolved legends. Hit that bell icon so you never miss what's next. Inside America's most secure prison. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, The Rock, was never meant to rehabilitate. It was built to contain. Located a mere 1.25 miles off San Francisco's coast, Alcatraz began as a military fort in the 1850s. By 1934, it had been transformed into the U.S. government's final line of defense against its most dangerous inmates, a maximum security, minimum privilege institution for those too violent or too cunning for anywhere else. The cell house, built from steel and sweat, featured 4 cell blocks, a dining hall, a hospital, and a small library. Cells were barely large enough to stand and turn around, metal bars cold enough to bite the skin. Inmates were counted up to 13 times a day. Guards outnumbered them in ratio, and privileges like talking at meals or receiving mail had to be earned. Among the 312 prisoners it once held were Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly, names that carved Alcatraz into American folklore. For those who defied order, D-Block awaited, the hole, a place where light and sanity were equally scarce. After nearly 30 years, saltwater corrosion, rising maintenance costs, and public pressure closed Alcatraz on March 21, 1963. Today, it stands as a museum, visited by more than 1 million people a year, a silent monument to punishment, endurance, and the human will to break free. But its walls couldn't contain everything, because one night, the impossible happened. The myth of the escapable rock. Alcatraz wasn't just a prison, it was a message. It said, "No one leaves." For 29 years, that myth held true. There were 14 escape attempts. Most ended in capture, a few in death. None were ever confirmed successful. The icy waters of San Francisco Bay, swift, dark, and merciless, became the prison's final guard. The idea of survival wasn't just unlikely, it was unthinkable. Until June 11, 1962. That night, 3 men vanished. Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin. When morning came, the cells were empty, and so was the myth. Frank Morris, the mind that outwitted the rock. Frank Lee Morris wasn't an ordinary inmate. He was brilliant, methodical, and unbreakably patient. Orphaned at 11, incarcerated by 13, Morris grew up inside the system and learned how to manipulate it. He escaped from multiple prisons before finally being sent to Alcatraz in 1960. From the moment he arrived, he was already looking for a way out. He soon found allies in John and Clarence Anglin, brothers he'd known from earlier prison stints. Together, with Alan West, they began crafting one of the most calculated escape plans in history. Every move was deliberate, every sound covered by the wheezing of Morris's accordion during music hour. With stolen spoons, broken saw blades, and a handmade drill powered by a vacuum cleaner, they chipped away at the salt-weakened concrete behind their cell vents. At night, papier-mâché grills painted to match the walls hid their work. The genius wasn't just in the digging, it was in the deception.
Crafting the illusion. The escape depended on performance. The men sculpted eerie, lifelike dummy heads from soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper, painting them with stolen pigments and topping them with real human hair from the prison barber shop. Guards doing head counts never touched prisoners, they only glanced into the cells. The illusion of sleep was perfect. Bodies made of bundled towels beneath the blankets completed the ruse. When the guards peered in that night, everything appeared ordinary. But by morning roll call, the cells were empty, and the myth was broken. Behind those fake vents lay a tunnel into the prison's unguarded service corridor. There, hidden from sight, the men built a secret workshop, assembling paddles, life jackets, and an inflatable raft made of over 50 stolen raincoats. The raincoat raft and the icy bay. On the night of June 11, 1962, under a moonless sky, Morris and the Anglin brothers made their move. They climbed the ventilation shaft to the roof, pried open the vent cover, and descended to the northeastern shore of the island. There they inflated their handmade raft using a modified concertina as a pump. The raft, roughly 6 by 14 feet, was stitched from raincoats and sealed using steam pipes. Every inch was built inside the prison. At around 11:30 p.m., they pushed off into the freezing current, aiming for Angel Island, less than 2 miles away. Days later, a paddle, a wallet, and fragments of the raft washed ashore, but no bodies were ever found. Warden Richard Willard told reporters, "You hear the wind, don't you? And you see the water. Do you think you could make it?" Most believed the men had drowned, but others, scientists, agents, and even the Anglin's family, weren't so sure. Allen West, the man left behind. Allen West was part of the plan, but he never made it out. That night, his hole wasn't wide enough. As he clawed at the last inches of concrete, the others slipped away. By dawn, he was alone. He later confessed everything: how they dug, how they built, how they escaped. West's testimony became the blueprint for every investigation since. Yet some believe the others altered their route, fearing West might talk. He became the only witness left on the inside, a man who came inches from freedom and missed it. The letter that shook the case. In 2013, over 50 years after the escape, San Francisco police received a letter. It read, "I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962. Yes, we all made it that night, but barely." The writer, claiming to be John Anglin, said that Morris died in 2005, Clarence in 2008, and that he was dying of cancer. He offered to surrender for medical help. The FBI tested the letter for fingerprints, DNA, and handwriting. All results were inconclusive. It could be real, or it could be a hoax. When CBS broke the story in 2018, it reignited a half-century-old fire. New age-progressed images were released, and the U.S. Marshals quietly confirmed the case was still open.
Science versus skepticism. For decades, officials insisted the escapees drowned, but modern science tells a different story. In 2014, Dutch researchers recreated the tidal currents from that night. Their findings? If the men launched their raft between 11 p.m. and midnight, they could have drifted safely to Angel Island. The data aligned perfectly with the escape timeline. Suddenly, the impossible didn't seem so impossible. And with that, the line between myth and fact blurred once again. Maybe they didn't just escape from Alcatraz. Maybe they escaped into legend. Legacy of the Rock. Today, Alcatraz is a museum. Its cells cold, its corridors silent. But one mystery still hums beneath the waves. Did they make it? Or did the bay take them for good? The truth may never surface, but the story of Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers endures not as a tale of crime, but of cunning, courage, and the undying human hunger for freedom. Because sometimes the real prison isn't the walls around us. It's the belief that they can't be broken. Implications of the claim that scientists have finally solved the Alcatraz Island escape mystery in 2025, exploring what this means for criminal justice systems, historical memory, institutional myth-making, and society at large. 1. Rewriting institutional narratives. For decades, Alcatraz stood as the ultimate symbol of escape impossible. The narrative was 3 men vanished, presumed drowned, the fortress held firm. If scientists now credibly show that the escape was successful, or at least far more plausible than once thought, then the institutional story must be revised. That has implications for how we view maximum security prisons, how we evaluate claims of no escape possible, and how we understand the power of myth in shaping public perception of institutions. The Rock becomes less a fortress of finality and more a stage for ingenuity. That shift challenges the self-image of prison systems which rely on deterrence and the aura of invincibility. 2. The role of science and technology in solving enduring mysteries. If the 2025 claim is true, then this case becomes a textbook example of how modern forensic science, perhaps including tidal modeling, AI facial recognition, DNA, ocean current simulation, can revisit cold cases and overturn long-held assumptions. The ripple effect. Law enforcement agencies and historians may be motivated to re-examine other unsolved institutional mysteries with new tools. It signals that time alone does not seal a case. Evolving technology can reopen it. This may lead to renewed hope or anxiety in cold case investigations for both victims' families and institutions accused of cover-ups or accepted myths. 3. Impact on victims, families, and legacy. For the families of the escapees, Frank Lee Morris, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin, and for the former prison staff, the outcome affects dignity and closure. If they survived, then their story shifts from lost to the sea to one of survival and evasion. For Alcatraz's custodians and visitors, the legend shifts from hopelessness to cunning. Museums, heritage sites, and tourism around Alcatraz may adjust their narratives to reflect the new findings, perhaps emphasizing escape ingenuity rather than impregnable security. This alters how visitors interpret the site and how the story is told in popular culture. 4. Implications for prison design and security philosophy. If a supposedly escape-proof prison was successfully outwitted, that raises questions about what constitutes maximum security. Security systems, architectural design, monitoring protocols, all may be scrutinized. Prisons built on the assumption that escape is nearly impossible may need to reassess vulnerabilities, especially long-term ones like deterioration, institutional complacency, human ingenuity. It may spur new thinking in corrections policy, that no system is foolproof and that the human factor remains unpredictable. That in turn might lead to more investment in monitoring, infrastructure renewal, or in the alternative, increased skepticism of how much deterrence can rely on fortress imagery. 5.
Cultural and symbolic consequences. Alcatraz's myth-making was powerful. The phrase, "no one ever escaped," became a cultural touchstone. Even political rhetoric borrowed it. If the mystery is solved, the myth shifts. The cultural symbolism of Alcatraz goes from ultimate inescapability to ultimate escape ingenuity. That has ripple effects in popular culture. Books, films, documentaries will reinterpret the story. Additionally, the narrative around criminal redemption, human resourcefulness, and institutional power will adjust. It may feed broader themes about underdog victory, the fallibility of systems, or the triumph of cunning over structure. 6. Implications for justice and legacy cases. This case may encourage reopening of other legacy cases where institutions, prisons, psychiatric hospitals, government facilities claim containment of problems, but new evidence suggests otherwise. It raises questions around accountability. If the escape succeeded, was there negligence? Did the institution cover up the possibility? Or did the system simply miscalculate? The answer may change how responsibility is assigned and remembered. 7. Ethical and historical memory dimensions. When we revise a story this entrenched, questions emerge: what else have we accepted as fact because institutions told us so? How much of history is built on narrative convenience or myth? For historians and archivists, the Alcatraz case reminds us of the need to continually challenge official accounts. Also, ethically, if the escapees did survive, how should they be treated? Are they fugitives forever, or do they deserve some form of resolution? The public may debate whether statute of limitations or moral closure should apply. The preservation of their story becomes part of our collective memory. 8. Impact on tourism and interpretation of the site. For tourism at Alcatraz Island, now primarily a museum site, the new findings may mean changes in tour narration, exhibit content, and marketing. Visitors may be drawn by the solved mystery rather than the unsolvable legend. That may increase visitation, but also change the tone, from awe in hopelessness to respect for escapecraft. Exhibit designers and interpretation specialists will need to update displays, perhaps include interactive simulations of the escape route based on the new science. The way we physically experience the site may shift accordingly. 9. Broader philosophical reflections. Finally, this story touches on free will, institutional power, and human agency. If the men successfully escaped, then it's a reminder that even the most formidable systems can be challenged by individuals who refuse to accept limits. That has implications beyond prisons. In any system where the balance is tilted heavily toward authority and containment, the possibility of disruption remains. It invites reflection on what freedom means, how it is pursued, and how institutions respond. In summary, if the 2025 scientific findings about the Alcatraz escape hold up, then this single story extends far beyond the island in San Francisco Bay. It touches on institutional myth-making, the evolution of forensic science, prison design, cultural memory, ethics, tourism, and human dignity. The legend of Alcatraz will no longer be simply "no one could escape." It may become "someone did." And in that shift lie many profound implications for how we view power, resistance, and the true meaning of confinement.